Hello everyone, welcome to my Java tutorial. And in this tutorial, I'll be teaching you constructors. Now, let us consider the same example which we saw in the previous tutorial. Okay, so in this case, look at here. Okay, here I haven't initialized any values, right? So these variables are not assigned any values. Okay, so I haven't initialized them, right? But I have created an object of dog. Now let's just try to print the values of breed and color and see what we get, because I haven't initialized them, right? So I'm just curious what values I will get after running them. Okay, let's say breed sysout obj1 dot color. Now I'll just run this program, and for time being I'll just comment these statements. Let's run it, and as you can see, we got null as the answer. Now what is this null? Okay, because I haven't initialized these variables with any values, so how do we get a null over here? Now this null is the default value of string. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if we don't assign any values, or if we don't initialize the variables with any values, then when the object is created, that time those variables will be initialized with the default values. Okay, now the default values will be different for different data types. Let's say, for example, if it is an int, then the default value will be 0. If it is a float, again float is a data type which holds decimal numbers. Okay, if it is a float, then the default value will be 0.0. If it is a boolean, then the default value will be false. Okay, so these are the default values for different data types, right? So the point is, if we don't assign any values, or if we don't initialize the variables of any class, then when the object is created, those variables will be initialized with the default values. Okay, now what if I don't want the default values? What if I want to initialize them with my own values? Okay, so one way of doing that is, I can probably write or initialize them over here itself, right? So I can say Labrador, that is just some breed which I found out, and color. Okay, so this is one way of initializing the variables of an object. Okay, so in this case, what will happen is, every time I create a dog object, that object will be initialized with these values. Okay, so if I create 100 of dog objects, then all the 100 dog objects will have breed as Labrador and color as white, which is again not a good way of initializing, because I may not want all the dogs to be of the same breed and color, right? Sometimes I may want a different dog objects with different breed and color. So how do I do this? Because in this case, whichever object I create, that will be initialized with these values only, right? Now this is where the constructor comes into picture. Okay, so I'll just remove this for now. Yeah. Now, what is a constructor? The main purpose of a constructor is initializing objects. Okay, so how do we write a constructor? Now again, a constructor, we can consider it as a special method, right? And the syntax for writing it is as follows. First of all, a constructor does not have a return type, right? And the name of the constructor is the same name as that of the class. So in this case, the name of the class is dog. So the name of my constructor will also be dog. And then comes the round brackets and then the body. Okay, now here we can pass some parameters. Let's say string B, which will represent the breed, and then another string C, which will represent the color. And inside this, I can initialize the values, these variables, with these variables. Okay, so let's say breed is equal to B and color is equal to C. Okay, so this is the way we create any constructor. Okay, so it has the same name as that of the class, and it does not have a return type, right? Now I'll just comment this for a while. Okay, so our constructor is ready. Now how do we create an object of this class? Now for doing that, I just have to say dog obj2 is equal to new dog, and while creating the object itself, I can pass the values, right? So let's say I'm passing the values as Labrador. Okay, and the second value will be the color. Okay, so I've created a dog object and I've initialized the variables with these values. And how does this happen? And that happens because of this constructor, right? So I have a constructor with 2 parameters, and that is why I can pass 2 parameters over here, right? So similarly, I'll create another dog object, dog obj3 is equal to new dog, and again I can pass some value over here. Let's say German Shepherd. Okay, and again the color will be brown, anything. Okay, so this is the way we initialize an object. So here you can see I have initialized different objects with different values, and that is the benefit of a constructor. Now again, one point you have to keep in mind: if I try to write if I try to create an object with the with empty parentheses, now it will show error. And why is that? Because we don't have any constructor with empty parentheses, and earlier it was allowing because the compiler that time created a default constructor for us, right? So when we don't create any constructor, the compiler creates a default constructor for us, right? But the moment we create even one constructor, the compiler won't create any constructor, right? So in this case, it is showing error because the compiler hasn't created the default constructor for us. And that is because we have created our own constructor. So for making this work, we'll have to again create a constructor over here with empty parentheses, right? So that is the way it works. So again, as a concluding point, I would say the main purpose of a constructor is to initialize objects. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you for watching and see you in my next tutorial.